to today's January 14th Dover School Committee meeting. We will commence here at 5:31 p.m. And first order of the agenda is community comments. We have shared a link for a Zoom if people would like to make community comments there, or you're welcome to join us in person. Do we have any community comments? Seeing none online or in person, we can move to our first agenda item, which will be our superintendent comments.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief because we have a joint meeting coming up where I'm hoping to give everybody one update at the same time. And just want to recognize a few things that have happened since our last meeting, which was the full day of professional development after Thanksgiving. Denny will give some highlights when we meet with the other two committees. I just want to express how grateful I am to Denny and the work that he did with his PLC and curriculum and department chair leaders. And it was a great opportunity for me to get a glimpse into the math work that our elementary teachers are doing. So more to come on that. One of my favorite events, the Festival of Lights, happened at Chickering, so I hope you're able to enjoy that. Other than that, there's been a lot of talk about numbers and budget. You'll hear an update on that tonight, but we're in budget season for all three districts, and we'll continue on that route until April. And otherwise, if there's anything else you'd like me to discuss, I'm happy to answer questions tonight or put it on the agenda for our joint meeting coming up.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on Zoom? Goalie, Martha?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we can then move into our financial reports.
Yes, good evening, everyone. In your packet are the warrants that had been approved. And since we met in November and skipped December, your list is a little bit longer this week. And I always appreciate Jesse stopping by Town Hall and signing off on these on your behalf. Again, if there's ever any questions, always feel free. We keep copies in central office if you wanted to flip through and see the types of expenses that are making up the warrants, and we do tell you what fund they're being charged against. Rolling into your monthly report, because we always try to give you the most up-to-date information we can. Your financials are always of an odd date, so today they're as of January 7th, which was the last we had posted some warrants and payroll. And so as we do, we keep a running report, and only things in bold are new information. We did have some activity in out of district since we last met, and keep in mind anything that we start bringing forward to you as positive or negative variances, we also have to consider what that impact is going to be on fiscal year 26. So we'll talk about it in regards to your fiscal year 25 results, but then we'll also, when we talk about fiscal year 26 budget, I'll have some comments to make as well. So we did have some new placements that came into, that actually settled just recently, and that has increased your negative out-of-district tuition by about $200,000. We still have the offset for transportation of the $150, but you are, if you compare your financials, November to January, you're going to see that number went up $200,000. So the negative variance in just tuition is a little over $1 million. We have the $150 a positive variance in transportation costs to help offset that. And then further to offset that, keep in mind you have your circuit breaker reimbursement that is really there as our safety net, and that is at $1.2 million. So you can see that as we're continuing to carry just a little bit in our in-district right now until we fully get to the end of the year, we are using the majority of our out-of-district we're using the majority of our circuit breaker reimbursement to offset our unknowns in our out-of-district world. So right now, if we stopped everything as is, we would turn back $450,000 out of the $1.2 million. That will probably continue to shrink just a little bit, but until we cross over, if we had $450,000 of additional out-of-district expenses, which hopefully we won't have to go ask the town for additional appropriations. Keep in mind that's that safety net with circuit breaker.
Dawn, quickly.
Right, so I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Martha.
I just wanted to see if I can translate this.
Okay.
So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, please.
So unlike Sherborne, Dover budgets agnostic to the $1.2 million in the circuit breaker.
Exactly.
So I think what I'm hearing from you is even though we're now at a spend of just over 1 million, we're still in the clear. We don't have to go back to Dover for that amount, and that crossover would happen if we get an additional 450. I think you said.
Correct.
In out of district placement. Okay.
Yeah. About that number, because that's still rolling in our in-district operations too, which are running pretty close to budget.
Okay.
But yes, and we have the last couple of years, we've actually had some large variances that have caused us to use a large proportion of our circuit breaker towards our operating budget. So what happens is actually, this is the budget we have, we're over, right? So I start charging things to the circuit breaker fund because we have that money allowed to us for use for out of district.
And that's reflected in your warrant report up above.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm tracking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don, just a quick question. You said there were 2 new additions to out of district when you started your.
Well, I usually try not to be that specific. There were some new additions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That impacted.
Okay.
Yeah.
More just curious if they were brand new to
Yes.
town or they're later stage.
They are. Some of them have been move-ins.
Okay.
And so there's a move-in law, but when you have someone who moves in from out of state, we assume that responsibility from day one.
Okay.
And so typically if you're picking up amounts like that, it's because they're probably moving from out of state. If they're moving district to district and they're out of district and they're moving this time of year, there's a safety net that the sending district still has to cover.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But the activity that we have had here is actually a couple different scenarios are students that didn't qualify for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of things of what's happening, but the latest little thing we had were move-ins.
Okay. Thanks.
So other than that, everything is operating based on what we've already previously discussed. And as you can see, we're right on budget for salaries. I would expect that's going to potentially get a little negative because we'll still have substitute costs that we haven't incurred. But hopefully we'll have some expenditures that will help offset that little bit of negative in the salaries, because we usually do try to look at the operating budget in the 2 pieces. So in district, we try to keep within that operating range, and then out of district, we look at in conjunction with circuit breaker.
Okay. Thank you. So we move on to the discussion items. We have one for today, which is the proposed FY26 budget version 2.0.
Yeah, so we're at a point in the budget cycle where we do know we have some retirements and they are finalized. Keep in mind that our educators contract, they can let us know by November 1st if they're going to retire. They have until February 1st to finalize that, and there is a retirement incentive payment in there, which is why they notify us. So we have some retirements that haven't completely said we're good to go. So those will show up in your version 3.0 if they materialize, but we have some that are known. So that's the one adjustment we're bringing forward tonight are some retirements that we know about that we can incorporate the savings from their replacements. So knowing that usually when you retire, you're on the high end of our matrix, and we sort of hire at, not the lowest end, but somewhere in that master's 4 or 5 is usually where we try to hire. So there is going to be some salary savings. So that's the $85,000 that we're bringing forward as the one adjustment for tonight. And that then brings the in-district operating budget down to a 5.53% from a 6.51. Do know that there are several other areas that we're looking at for adjustments. As you know, we're looking at the first grade number of sections. We don't like to make that call too early, but those will be adjustments that we will be bringing forward to you if the data stays the same in March, right before you do your open hearing. So we do anticipate having some further reductions in your operating budget. 5.53 is still even high. So if we can get something a little bit lower, then I think that will please the town as they're building their budget. And we do know we'd never taken anything away that we really need, but I think there are some things that we can take away that would not make any sacrifices in the quality of education that we're presenting, much like reducing the section if we don't have the students to be in the class. On the flip side, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead on the flip side. I'll wait until you're done.
Okay. No, if you want to do that, because I'm going to talk about out of district.
I was going to try to pivot there too. So talk to that first, please.
So on the out of district, as I just said, we had a placement that was a little bit expensive, and we're seeing that placement come in. Those placements come in mid-year. So now you have to think about having those placements in our equation full year for next year. We're looking at probably a sizable, it could be $500,000 that we're going to add. Given the size of our projected circuit breaker, though, it's going to be in the neighborhood of probably 1.6, 1.7 million. I would like to discuss with Warrant for the first time allowing us to use some of that circuit breaker to offset that additional expense, so we're not adding $500,000 more to this budget. If we did that, you'd be looking at a 5.53% increase overall. Versus where we're sitting right now at the 1.33. And I think from a taxpayer standpoint, if we are having a larger amount of circuit breaker coming in, I think that maybe we come up with an equation that Dover says, okay, $1 million one of your circuit breaker, we're going to act like we don't have it. But when you start exceeding numbers like that, I don't think it makes sense to gross up, knowing that we're going to have the reimbursement coming in. So I know this is sort of a new idea. I didn't really want to add that number here right now, and I think, and I said in the report that we'd have this discussion with Warrant when we meet with them to see what they're comfortable with doing. They actually will have the final say because it's their methodology that we follow for circuit breaker. But I feel like it's time to sort of, at least this year, take a look at that and not overstate our operating budget, knowing that we've got a large reimbursement that we can offset it with. So that's what, Jeff, when you join us next week, that's one of our topics of discussion. It could be in March, I come back and say we're going to add $500,000 because they want to keep the same methodology. But for tonight, I wanted to entertain the idea, not add it in, and see where we go. And who knows, by March, the placements could change either, one way or the other. Either up or down. But I think given, again, our large amount of circuit breaker reimbursement, usually we're in the 1.2, $1 million, 1.2. We're going to look at like 1.2, we're going to up to be like 1.6, 1.7. So I think it's a good opportunity to take a look at how we budget.
Okay, makes sense.
Would you be able to depict like the last 5 years in terms of our experience, just so we can kind of visualize what you're saying?
Yeah, I will definitely pull that together because I also want to show that consistently we've been in the $1 million to $1.2 million reimbursement amount, and we've never exceeded that. We've always been able to. We've never had to go back to the town and ask for more money.
Right.
But where do we fall? So some years we're giving back the whole $1 million. Some years, the last couple of years, we have had some experience that we haven't budgeted for. But know that when we budget, if things pop up after even like February, we tend not to add them to the budget because we know we have circuit breaker. Because there is a.
I recall that there are variances that occurred last year that we didn't need to bring forward to the town because of the way we've handled our budget.
Right. So say if you're in another town, and you have a tighter budget, they probably budget for some projected placements, right? To anticipate things coming in that they don't know about. And I do that. We do that in Sherburne as well. Like we'll throw one or two, if we've got some students that are simmering about going to out of district, we'll actually budget for a potential placement, because we need to cover ourselves. Mm-hmm. In Dover, because we know we always have the circuit breaker to fall back on, we always just budget for the known placements at the time when we do the budget. So if we have anything simmering or anything that could be a potential placement down the road, we say we're not going to build that into the budget because we know we have circuit breaker to cover it. So it's a little bit of a different philosophy. And
it is, right.
Yeah, right. And in this case, because our circuit breaker reimbursement is having like a $500,000 or $600,000 increase because of some of the placements we have this year that are going to go away next year. That's where I'm bringing this new idea into the equation because I don't see it continuing. We've got this interesting blip right here that I think makes sense to account for by not building into the budget, but knowing that we're going to have extra circuit breaker, more circuit breaker than normal next year to help cover even a known case.
Okay. And just, for the purposes of fullness of the record here, to the extent that we have anybody moving into Dover that is requiring services beyond what our school is able to provide them, we are legally obligated to provide this out-of-district funded educational opportunity, correct?
Correct, just like any other Dover resident that currently lives here, yeah.
So this is not discretionary, I guess is what I'm telling.
No, it's not. This is mandated.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn, I have one question, just out of curiosity. Is there a ceiling to the out-of-district cost per student? So there's no max. It could be whatever is necessary. Okay.
And that's where I think I've tried to. We always try to be we live in a small town, so we're actually try to talk about this generally so that we keep confidentiality.
Right.
But I think I did mention that we've got a current out-of-district case that's in excess of $700,000. That's what's causing this little blip that's going to go away.
Right.
Which is why I think we should look at this a little differently. It's we've got an unusual component of out-of-district placements this year.
So that's exceptionally high.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But think about it. So, circuit breaker, you have to take, 3 times foundation. So we have to cover, say, the first 50,000, maybe a little bit more than 50. Anything after that, we get reimbursed 75%.
Okay.
So these larger cost placements, we are getting, 75% of the majority of that back, which is what's driving up our normal 1.1, 1.2 circuit breaker up to like 1.6, 1.7.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And remember, it's always the year that's a year in arrears.
Okay.
So what we're experiencing this year is what our circuit breaker reimbursement is for next year.
Okay.
So you've got to be careful. There is that situation where you have a large placement like that. You're getting a large amount of reimbursement. You got to think about it the year after.
Right.
That's going to go away.
Right. Okay.
So that's where we do look at that. As well. And I'm usually pretty good about telling Warrant, like, okay, it looks high now, but keep in mind this is going to go away.
Okay.
And this is what you should assume circuit breaker is going to be the following year as they do their budgeting.
Okay, makes sense.
And I think if you visualize the data, that's going to become apparent. Based on what you just explained, I totally understand the concept of then taking that $500,000 excess and getting credit for it in that year. That makes a lot of sense to me. You'll see that though when you visualize your
when I play it out,
and for the amounts that we've historically had.
And for the first time ever, like we've had a lot of first time evers, we actually left. So what usually happens is the town has us spend circuit breaker down to 0. And then that's why your actuals look much lower than your budgets when you look in the blue book or when you look at our numbers, right? Because we report net of circuit breaker.
Okay.
We left about 100,000 in circuit breaker this year because we had that situation where we had the extraordinary reserve that came in, the 275 that we had to apply. We got it early last year to help us with this expensive placement, but we weren't going to get the reimbursements. They gave it to us in advance. So to protect ourselves a little bit, I did talk to the town about keeping 100,000 sitting there. So we have padded our 1.2 that you're seeing here with 100,000 that we kept in the circuit breaker account. So we actually even have a little bit more of a buffer, only because we did keep that. Normally, though, we wipe that account to zero every year. We don't keep anything on hand for the next year. Unlike other districts that really keep a whole year's worth in hand and then work with it that way, it's sort of interesting how we handle it here. So that was a first time that we've ever kept a balance as of June 30th in the town circuit breaker fund. But luckily we did, because it did, we definitely, at that point we knew some of these cases were going to continue that we thought were going to age out. It's very complicated, but just
Explaining it.
And are we normally paying ahead of time, or is it oftentimes we're getting reimbursed as the payments are due to the outside? Is the tuition due like all at the beginning of the school year?
No, we don't pay.
Oh, okay.
We pay because municipalities never prepay.
Okay.
So we're usually paying the month the month that's happening, but we get monthly or quarterly bills from all of our out of district placements.
Okay.
So we're not paying it up front. And circuit breaker comes in on a quarterly basis, where we're actually getting the money in from the state.
Okay. Thanks.
So we have a little bit of new information for you tonight, but as you know, we still have a lot of things open. In your version 1.0 is a placeholder for the transportation contract, which will go out in the next couple of weeks. So we'll have that contract back in for all 3 school districts before your March meetings. And then we'll continue just to be looking at the other operating components of our budget as we get more clarity to what's happening in the school as far as student needs and the census data. So should look forward to seeing multiple other adjustments when we convene back in March.
And to just add, I've mentioned multiple times before, we're going to at least have bids to understand how much the bus tracking would be if we were to add that.
Yeah, I have a meeting tomorrow with our bus company actually to see if how they've been working that with other districts and whether or not it needs to be in the bid or something that we can just add after the fact. Okay. So I will be having that discussion with him, and also just to see if there's been any other changes in the landscape that we should be aware of before our bid goes out.
Great.
So yes. So just to roll it out, so we'll have just Jeff joins Beth and I with Warrant next week to review version 2.0. Then you will have version 3.0 on March 6th. I'll share that with you, and then we will open our public hearing and do that formal presentation. That's a night for the community to come and ask any questions that they would like to hear answered about your budget. And then that is the night you will approve your budget. Then it leaves our responsibility and heads over to the town, where we will participate in their open hearing on March 17th. And Jeff, you'll typically give a brief presentation along with probably Mark for the region that evening, and then town meetings May 5th. So it takes a while. There's lots of steps, but we'll get to the tail end of our responsibilities after March 6th.
Okay.
So anything else that comes up during, if you're looking at your budget book and have other questions, feel free to send them on to Jeff, and Jeff can send them our way, and we'll make sure that we can answer those at the March meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Don. So next item here is a lovely acronym. We have the Advisory Committee for Extra Compensatory Duties.
You did your homework.
ACED, which I think Beth is going to present to us. This is an action item, so we will take a vote on the proposal.
Thank you. So as you know, we have our educators contract, which lays out salaries by lane and the number of credits they have and the number of years our educators have been teaching. At the back of the contract is what's called Appendix C, and it lists all of the additional positions that our teachers, or sometimes very rarely outside folks, carry, such as PLC leader at the elementary level or department chair at the high school, chess club advisor, hockey coach. And so we have the authority, even though the contract is negotiated every 3 years, to revisit the ACED listing every year to perhaps add something that we usually do a trial run of 2 to 3 years to make sure that the program is gaining traction and will sustain itself, or if there needs to be an adjustment in how much that stipend is. So we go with a ratio of 1.0, which is roughly $1,500. So, for example, chess club might have a ratio of 1.0, which means that advisor gets $1,500 to run that club for the year, whereas the hockey coach might have a 6.0 because it's a bigger time commitment. The one recommendation that we're bringing forth to you tonight in Dover is relative to a mentor leader. So as you know, all of the teachers new to Dover Sherburne in their first year are part of our mentoring program. So every educator is matched with someone in their department or someone in their grade or someone who can provide support to them for their first year. All of the meetings and curricula and support are organized by someone called a mentor leader, who oversees the program, makes the agendas for the meetings, and provides support as needed. For many years, we've had one mentor leader for the entire program K to 12, which was fine, but it was a little bit clunky. And Denny, in his role as assistant superintendent, was working with the former mentor leader and said, based on the needs of an elementary teacher with curriculum instruction, student support versus that of a high school teacher, they're quite different. So what would happen if we split this into two parts, that there is a mentoring program for our elementary educators and a mentoring program for our secondary educators? So they piloted it this year, super successful. And so moving forward, the recommendation coming out of the ACED committee is that while this year during the pilot, the stipend was split between two people, that was a gift of kindness by them, we would like to have two official mentors who are paid the full stipend. So tonight we're asking you to vote for a second mentor leader for the elementaries, which means you'd only be responsible for half of it. And the good news is this doesn't come out of the operating budget, it comes out of Title II grants. So we'd like to ask your consideration for that addition, and I'm happy to answer any questions for Denny.
Thank you, Beth. Any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the plan as set forth by Beth?
So, Martha Castle, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Kate Cook, second.
All in favor? Oh, we need to do a roll call because they're on video.
Yeah.
Martha?
Yes, I approve.
Goalie?
Goalie, yes, I approve.
Okay.
Yes, I approve.
And Jeff Cassidy.
Great, thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much. And now we can move to our consent items, which we have a number here. We can do them together. We do have approval for the DSC minutes from November 19th. We have grants. We have the town report. And we do have preschool tuition 26 rates that are all included in the packet. So first, do we have questions or discussion around any of those items?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent items?
Martha Castle, so moved.
Thank you, Martha. Do I have a second?
Kate Cook, second.
Thank you, Kate. And now to a vote. Martha?
Approved.
Goalie?
Goalie Sapari, approved.
Kate?
Kate Cook, approved.
Jeff Cassidy, approved. All right. Don't think we had any informational items to discuss. Are there any items for the March 6th, 2025 meeting to put on the agenda now? If not, as always, reach out to me ahead of time if there's other things you want to add.
And just make a mental note, that's on a Thursday, so it's a little bit different. But we try to get ahead of the open hearing for the town. So the region meets on Tuesday, you guys meet on Thursday.
Okay. Anything else for tonight? Seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Goalie Sapari.
Go ahead, Mark. Goalie.
Goalie Sapari, motion moved.
Second.
Martha Castle, seconded.
Thank you. And go for the roll call. Martha,
Martha Castle approved.
Goalie,
Goalie Sapir approved.
Kate,
Kate Cook approved.
and Jeff Cassidy approved. I call this meeting adjourned at 6 p.m.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
all. Stay healthy.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good luck, Martha.
Bye.